The company was originally founded by my mother. I just decided to invest my time, energy, resources into becoming a specialist in senior living. I thought I would pave the way for my own exit maybe 10 years later. Over time, I really grew a passion for the field, for senior living. Suddenly, I have almost a 50% improvement in productivity at the company. I like Nike. I wear Nike shoes. I like Coca-Cola. I don't want to be selling sugar-laced Coca-Cola to millions of people. I don't feel good if I were out there selling $200 Nike Air Jordan shoes. I wouldn't get satisfaction, emotional satisfaction from that. I do get that from helping these mission-based organizations be successful and serve their communities by providing a living experience that truly makes people's lives better. We had to ask the question, what will truly set us apart from others in the field? And if we really want to be the specialist, we have to be able to come to the table with knowledge that no one else in the field has. And so we started doing our own proprietary research project. It became clear that we really had an opportunity to grow by adding service lines. Patience and perseverance are probably the two strongest skills that you need to sort of survive and thrive as an entrepreneur. Do the right thing, make the right decision for the client. It may cost us more, but if you earn that trust and confidence of the client, they're going to stay with you. One of the best things about being the person that owns your own business, if something's not working the way you want it to work, you're in charge. You can make it happen. And that's liberating and it's freeing. One of the worst things about being an entrepreneur is you don't have anyone else to blame. But within that, be ready to forgive yourself. Understand you're going to make mistakes. I wouldn't even want to think about how many mistakes I've made over the last 30 years. The question is not how many mistakes you made. What do you learn? How do you move forward? How do you take a breath? How do you persevere? How do you use your patience? But don't blame yourself. There's no value in that. Take a breath and figure out what am I learning and how do I move forward? So like so many things in life, the blessing of something is also a curse. It's liberating, but it can be a crutch if you don't forgive yourself.
This is the Business Philosopher Within You podcast. I'm your host, Bhavesh Naik. A core theme of our podcast is building sustainable businesses that outlive their founders and leaders. An important part of building such a business is carrying forward the legacy of a family business and taking it to new heights. To shed some light on creating such a legacy, I have a very special guest for you today. Rob Lowe is the president and CEO of Lowe & Company, a national leader in the senior living marketing field. Originally founded by Rob's mother in 1980, Rob joined the company in 1989, then purchased it in 1998. When he bought the company, Rob evolved it to focus solely on senior living. Over the last 30 plus years, Lowe & Company has helped more than 300 retirement communities with a broad range of marketing services, from market and competitive analysis to rebranding and lead generation and to sales consulting. Rob is a frequent presenter at senior living conferences and board retreats where he shares his insights on a range of opportunities and challenges for the senior living industry. I'm pleased to have you on this podcast, Rob.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate the invitation.
So, Rob, 1989 is when you got involved with Lowe & Company. So take us back there a little bit and tell us about how and what got you involved in this company at that time.
Sure. There were a couple of things. You mentioned in the intro that the company was originally founded by my mother about 9 years before I joined. A little more of the backstory there is that growing up, when I was 8 and my siblings were 12, 11, and 4, my father died. He was a general practitioner, and he was on his way to a house call and died in a car accident. And my mother made a choice at that point, and that was she could go into an office somewhere and work most days like most people, or she could build on a skill set she had as a writer and work from home, raise the family.
Sure.
And so often, and that was obviously the choice that she made, was to really stay there, be with us as we were growing up for all the things we needed. And we would go to bed at night and we would hear that typewriter clicking away and clicking away. She would be doing her work, once we were all in bed. And that was always pretty meaningful to, I think I realized as I got older, her sacrifices, her commitments. And so when she started this business and started growing it, there came a time when I realized I could give something back. I had a strong business operations background.
Sure.
She had the creative background. She wasn't that much of a business person, but she was good at selling new business.
Sure.
And I was good at getting things done.
Right.
So it was a strong match.
Yeah.
And so I moved back up from Atlanta and joined her in the company. It's kind of funny, a little ironic in a way. At that time, I thought, well, I'll maybe come up and stay for 2 years and really lay a foundation for a solid business. Then I'll go back to Atlanta because it was fun being in your late 20s in Atlanta.
Yeah, sure.
Well, yeah, that was 35 years ago.
Huh.
So,
and here you are.
That was my 2-year plan. It's now stretched into a 35-year plan. But that's what drew me back. It was an opportunity to give something back, to try and help her out for a while. And then, as they say, a funny thing happened on the way to the forum, and here we are.
Yeah, here you are. So then, 1998, you ended up buying the company. So I'm assuming there was you said there was a great partnership because you had some competencies and characteristics that you both brought to the table. She had the creative and sales side, and you brought the operational side. And then I'm assuming that made a great partnership. So what was the impetus for you being able to buy the company, or we wanting to buy the company from her in about 9 years later, in 1998?
Right. So that really was not an easy decision because a marketing agency, an advertising agency, it's not an easy business. There are long hours, there's stress, there's client expectations. We exist to serve and meet client needs, and sometimes you don't get a lot of notice to solve that. So it's not a low stress business. So I really had to give it a lot of thought. But what I ultimately decided was that if we were already doing about half of our work in senior living,
sure,
and the other half was just a broad range of other kind of work.
Right.
But I thought if I took this business and focused it entirely on senior living, became a specialist in that field instead of a generalist in all sorts of fields, I could make the business worth more in the long run to me as my retirement asset.
Sure.
And senior living, of course, we all know about the aging of America.
Yeah.
And back in, right around the year 2000, that was still all ahead of us. So it was a great growth opportunity.
Sure.
And I just decided to invest my time, energy, resources into becoming a specialist in senior living and growing that. It's kind of ironic again in a way. I bought it for a business planning strategy, as an exit planning strategy. By being a specialist, I thought I would pave the way for my own exit maybe 10 years later.
Sure.
Instead, over time, I really grew a passion for the field, for senior living. We work almost entirely with not-for-profit clients, really mission-focused communities. And there's a lot of personal satisfaction that comes from the work that we do. The vision for our firm is every day we help a senior experience a better life.
Sure.
That's ultimately what we do by educating people about senior living and letting them see how their lives could be improved by moving into a community. We truly are making a difference.
Sure.
And
absolutely,
that became meaningful to me. I have to admit, in 98, that was not my focus. I didn't go into this because of a huge passion for the business. But
Right.
that grew over time. And it's been a very worthwhile endeavor.
Sure. So it seems like the vision of focus or being focused on the senior living community market, just that industry, was more of an evolution rather than a vision. Because sometimes folks say, well, this is my vision, this is what I'm going to do, and then they execute this vision. But then the other side of that is just kind of evolves and rolls into that bigger vision. So it's
Yeah, it was a little bit of both.
okay.
Because we didn't get into senior living to begin with in the early 90s with
Right.
the intention of becoming a specialist. It just
Sure.
happened.
Yeah.
But when I bought the firm, it was very intentional that, okay, we were going to get out of the other business lines. We were going to focus and be this specialist. That was
Sure.
very intentional.
Yeah.
But then it grew in a lot of other ways over time beyond what I'd ever initially imagined it,
Sure.
back in 98.
Yeah. Yeah. So something that, if you can stay on this for a little bit, because I talk to a lot of folks who are family businesses, and these are some of the things that they struggle with. The transition, you said it was a bit difficult. Did you have a good, sometimes as family members, as business partners, we disagree, or sometimes we have differences, or creative differences or opinions in terms of which direction to take the company in. So were you and your partner and your mother, were you on the same wavelength in terms of where you wanted to take the company, or was there some differences of opinion, as I said?
Perhaps surprisingly, through the years,
Mm-hmm.
I can't think of any significant disagreement that we ever had.
That's wonderful.
We were really pretty much in sync. And again, it goes back to we had complementary skill sets.
Yes.
If we would have overlapped in certain skill sets, we might have had more of a clash.
Sure.
But we didn't, and we blended well that way.
Sure.
But when once I purchased it, then it became my vision to execute, and she was phasing out of the business.
Sure.
So there wasn't really any reason for conflict at that stage either.
Sure. You said that you ended up focusing on the senior living community. Was there, and you said that you kind of grew into that, and that became your passion, and you got so wrapped up into this field, and then it just opened up new avenues, even as you focus. And the wonderful thing about this is that I hear this all the time. When you focus, we think that we're actually shutting down the opportunities. It's actually exactly the opposite. We open up new opportunities, even as we get passionate, even as we get really deeply involved into serving a certain group of people, right? So what was it that, if you can kind of try to get a grasp on, what was it that so got you fired up about this community, serving this community, this group of people? Is there anything that you can kind of talk about that was so important to you, your values, your something that kind of strikes a chord with you?
Right, and there are a couple of different ways to talk about that. Again, early on with the decision to focus and become a specialist.
Sure.
And then later as the passion grew.
Sure.
So the earlier part was, I mentioned we were a generalist agency. We were doing work for everybody.
Sure.
Every business has their own metrics or how they measure their success.
Right.
One of the key metrics for an agency is how much of the time that you spend working on client accounts do you actually get paid for?
Sure.
And when we were this generalist agency, basically 1 out of every 3 hours that we would spend on client work, we never got paid for because we kept learning a new business. We had to invest our time in learning about banking, learning about medical services, learning about whatever the client was.
Right.
We didn't get paid for that time. Once we became a specialist, now we're not doing that learning curve anymore.
Yeah.
Suddenly, I have almost a 50% improvement in productivity of the company.
Wow.
Because we're now the expert. We come in and we know the field and we know the topic. We know how to make it work.
Sure.
So the two business facets of why I wanted to focus on and becoming a specialist were capturing a greater, converting a greater portion of our time into revenue. Plus, when you're the specialist, you can actually charge more,
Right.
than the generalist because of that unique knowledge you bring to the table.
Absolutely.
So those were the initial business reasons. As we evolved into this, when you talk about the passion for the field, that, as I shared earlier, that came later. And I don't know that this is true of everybody, but I think for many of us, as we age, or as we see the world in different ways, and as we have children, and as, I'm not sure I should say our values change, but really what's important to us in a lot of different ways changes. And I like Nike. I wear Nike shoes. I like Coca-Cola. Don't know if I should say this on your podcast, but
That's
rum
okay.
and Coke, that's on a Friday or Saturday, that's a good thing.
Right.
But me, I don't want to be selling sugar-laced Coca-Cola to millions of people. That's not a healthy thing. It's not good for, I don't think it's good for the world to do that.
Right.
I don't feel good. Like if I were out there selling $200 Nike Air Jordan shoes, they're probably $300 today.
Right. Yeah.
That's, I wouldn't get satisfaction, emotional satisfaction from that. Right. I do get that from helping these mission-based organizations be successful and serve their communities by providing a living experience that truly makes people's lives better. So that's where the passion grew.
Absolutely.
Was realizing the impact we really were making in people's lives.
Yeah. And there's an immediate feedback. What you do, you can see the results of what you do being reflected in the communities and how to live, and then you get an immediate feedback. And there's a satisfaction to that. So I totally can get that 100%. And one of the things that we try to do a little bit here is try to humanize this person. So in terms of so there is the senior who's living experience that you enhance, and then you help it make better and we bring joy. So and at the same time, there's also, I'm sure there's an administrative community. There is the leadership and management of these communities. So who is your in business terms we call them the ideal client, although I'm not crazy about that term. Who is the person that you work with? If you can point out a couple of characteristics of this person. Sure. Who they are, what they do, what are their issues, what are their challenges.
Right. For how we market ourselves, the key person, it's the CEO of the organization.
Right.
And or the C-suite, but primarily the CEO. Someone who recognizes that their organization either has a challenge or an opportunity.
Right.
And they need help solving the challenge or realizing the opportunity.
Sure.
The challenge could be census is low. You have 200 residences, but 50 of them are sitting empty. They're not generating revenue.
Right.
That's a very difficult business place to be.
Sure.
How do you go about filling those and getting back up to maybe, so you only have 10 empty instead of 50.
Sure.
That's a very typical type of challenge that we would help them solve. On the other hand, it could be they have 200 residences and the 200 are full and they have 500 people on the wait list. There's an opportunity to grow. How do we help them grow? What should they build? What should they develop? We do market research. We lay out the program. What size residences should you add? What contract options should you offer? What are the price points? What are the amenities? We help map out a very detailed vision for what they could, evolve into as a community. Right. Then we work with architects and financial advisors to take this vision and turn it into reality. And along the way, of course, we're providing our marketing services to attract interest in the new larger community and to get people to buy residences and move in. So that's our ideal target, is the CEO. who has one of those two challenges, either census is low and they're missing revenue, or they have an opportunity to grow and increase revenue.
Sure. The journey so you had a vision and you're executing the vision, right? You wanted to focus on the senior living industry, and that vision is coming to fruition. And sometimes the vision is a moving target. We're always chasing that vision. That's what makes it into like a mission or a purpose, right? We're never quite there. We're always chasing it. That's a good thing. That's what keeps us going. So there's a vision of where you want to be, and there's the reality of where we are. So and that between those two posts is a journey. I'm here now if we want to get there. So you had quite a journey as an entrepreneur, as a business builder, and it's a 30 plus year long journey, right? 35 years. And this journey is quite often very fascinating. And what I would like to kind of get to know a little bit about is what is it, and we don't have time to get into all of it, but maybe you can point out some of the steps you took along the way on this journey, some of the milestones, or maybe some strategies, some ideas, some innovations, some systems that you put in place. What are some of the things that you did to go from where you were to get here today?
Sure. First, when we decided to focus solely on senior living and to be that specialist, we had to ask the question, what will truly set us apart from others in the field?
Important question.
If we really want to be the specialist, we have to be able to come to the table with knowledge that no one else in the field has.
Sure.
And so we started doing our own proprietary research projects. Right about the year 2000, each year we would pick a topic related to senior living marketing, and we would invest usually $20,000 to $25,000 worth of time, the value of an hourly rate or more, plus maybe $10,000 or more in expenses to do some sort of research that no one was paying us for.
Sure.
But we would learn important things about senior living marketing.
Sure.
And we would then turn what we learned into white papers for the field, into presentations to give at conferences.
Sure.
And so we would be able to take that knowledge out to the field and share it with the field. And that's been sharing with the field has been a big part of our marketing strategy forever, basically, as long as I've been owner.
Sure.
So that was the first thing. We need to invest in truly being the specialist. Then over time, it became clear that I talked about our clients having an opportunity to grow. We really had an opportunity to grow by adding service lines.
Sure.
For example, when we started in the field, we were focused in senior living. We were basically marketing and creative.
Right.
We would do the strategy, we would do the branding, we develop the ads, the direct mailings, and so forth. But that was really the core service. That was really what we did. But there's a problem. We could do a great job of generating leads, generating people at a community who say, yes, I want to learn more. But those people aren't going to move in unless the sales experience that they have is positive, unless the salespeople at the community do the job that they should be doing.
Sure.
And oftentimes we realized that was not happening. So one of the first major new service lines we added was sales consulting and sales training.
Right.
To be able to address that need and help, take that sale all the way from creating initial interest into ensuring people moved in.
Sure.
It made our work more effective overall. It produced better results for clients.
Sure.
It was an additional income stream. So kind of a win-win-win scenario. And that type of thing kept on through the years. We eventually added, in the early 2000s, website marketing, website development, there were specialist firms that did that work. And so we would outsource and partner with them. But as it grew and grew and grew, that became a service line that we needed to bring in-house and offer ourselves.
Sure.
Again, for a better margin on that work. And then there were a number of what we call our strategic services that we began to add as well. doing market analyses, market studies, looking at the depth of a market and the opportunity for a client to grow. Pricing work. Pricing is very much a part of the marketing.
Sure is. Yeah.
And competitive analyses and competitive positioning, and really helping organizations, develop strategic plans and master plans for growth.
Right.
So all these services we kept adding in over time to be able to offer a comprehensive range of marketing support services. And quite frankly, we do offer a broader range of marketing services than any other, company in our field today.
Sure.
So we are able to take a client from a vision for where they want to be in the future to realizing that vision and having it filled up with residents.
Sure.
So that's kind of our journey of, recognizing additional needs and opportunities along the way that were logical extensions of what we were already doing.
Right. And something that you mentioned that was kind of fascinating to me was you said that, you're a marketing agency, quote unquote, yet you were saying that you had an architect that you were outsourced to it. So you were actually getting into facility design. And
let me clarify that.
Yeah.
So we would, I use the word partner,
right,
but in the way of not literally like a financial partnership.
Sure.
But with firms in the field, just like we specialize in senior living marketing, there are architectural firms that specialize in senior living design.
Sure.
So we have several that we have quote unquote partnered with over the years, meaning that we bring the marketing expertise to the table. They bring the design and architectural experience to the table.
Sure.
And we work in partnership with the client to get the end results, but we're not literally providing through us architecture services.
Sure. Yeah, I understand. And what I find fascinating about it is that your focus is so much on the customer and their experience that you will bring whatever it is that, the architectural firm just happens to be an example. It could be financial services. It could be sales consultant or in the beginning, website services or website building. But your focus is so much on the senior living experience and the person that you are, who is your client, the CEO of the organization, that once you understood their issues and challenges and opportunities, you're saying that these are the resources we'll bring to you. And that may or may not be marketing. That may be other things outside of marketing, but the end result is that you have a happy customer and a happy resident.
Yeah.
Is that an okay summary of...
Yes. If you think about sort of that context that you were talking about, and whether it's financial advisors or architects or whatever, one of the ways that we position ourselves to support that growth process is you get a team together to plan a new community or expansion. You have the client, and you have the architect, and you have the financial analyst, and you have a construction manager, and you have the builder, and you have all these people there. And they're all smart, and they all know their businesses really well.
Right.
And they come up with this great, exciting plan. But guess who's not in the room during the planning process? The customer.
Exactly. Right.
So we represent the customer in that planning process. So our experience, boots on the ground, knowing what people want, knowing what they're willing to pay for. We represent the customer in that planning process to ensure that when this project actually goes to market, it'll be successful.
Right. That's quite fascinating. And you talked about people. One of the things that I like to kind of get into a little bit is on that journey, on the entrepreneurial journey, there is the entrepreneur and the business builders and the executive team. And yet we also bring a group of people along the ride, or they choose to join that ride with us. And that gets into how we manage people and how we lead them within our own organization, right? Within the umbrella of Love and Company. So, and then there's a cultural aspect of that. So, the question I have for you is, if you could characterize, and I think you're getting into this a little bit, if you could characterize the culture of your organization in terms of your priorities, in terms of your values, and also what your people, folks on the ground and within the office and everything that you do, if you could point out one or two characteristics of the culture of your company, what would that be?
It's really an interesting question, because it does come down, something I mentioned earlier, the advertising agency's business, it's not easy.
Right.
It can be stressful.
Sure.
For a person that just likes to do a 9 to 5, go in, get my job done, and go home, it can be a difficult environment.
Right.
So I really, you sort of one or two things. Collaboration and the sense and spirit of collaboration is one of the most important facets of things.
Sure.
To be able to have the person who's developing a marketing plan work productively with the person who's going to create a direct mailer, just think through strategy, think through options, and to value and the contribution that each can bring to the table. That's just a simplified example.
Yeah.
But collaboration is just a critical asset.
Yeah.
Innovation is the second one that comes to mind.
Mm-hmm.
And although I'll be honest, I don't think we've ever been as innovative as I would like us to be.
Sure.
We tend to sometimes fall into patterns where, okay, we've done it this way this time, so we're going to do it that way the next time and that way the next time.
Right.
And you want things that can work like that to a certain extent.
Sure.
But you also always want to be getting better.
Yeah.
And doing testing, like A/B testing, and try this, and is there a way to make it better? That's kind of the way my brain works. Is never settle on, okay, this is now the way to do it. We will always do it that way.
Right.
I always try and push to, how can we get better? How can we get better?
Sure. Yeah.
And that's, again, candidly, not a comfortable environment.
Right.
For some people
that
would prefer to be, tell me how to do it, and I'll do it that way over and over and over for you.
Sure.
I think we need to be more creative or more innovative than that.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. And that's a dilemma of a creative organization, also a creative person, that you have all these ideas that you're going to execute, and yet there is a reality of the marketplace, the reality of the ground, where you need to get things done and you have to move them in certain ways. So you need a process. And yet, if the process becomes too stale or too stringent, then it saps the creativity out of people. So it's a fascinating. I always find it fascinating when I talk to creative folks and creative organizations, because it's such a balance. The name that always comes to mind is Disney. Walt Disney, and he created Walt Disney is basically a creative organization, which he made into it's a process. And yet, when we go to Disney World, the creativity is still there. There's people are still expressing their talent and things like that in a very creative way, and so that's always it's a very important balance. And so innovation, and I'm assuming that you probably hire for that and you look for those kinds of qualities when you bring people on board to work for you within your organization. And something else that I heard was commitment. I think that the third thing that I heard was a bit of it's like, this is not 9 to 5, we want you to think a little bit beyond that. That doesn't mean that I'm going to make you work 10 hours a day, but it's not one of these things where, I do ABC, XYZ, 9 to 5, and 4:59, I'm packed and ready to go. My job is done, and then I turn off the switch up here. It's a little bit more than that.
Right. And in return for that commitment, we make a commitment to try and support people in their lives as much as possible.
Absolutely.
Because I know that there's going to be a day when somebody has to work late to get something done.
Right.
You can't just be one-sided that way. Okay, you need to do this, you need to do this, you need to do this.
Yeah.
The reverse is, I want people to leave at 4 and go see their kid play their soccer game.
Yes.
That's important. That's life. Yes. There's balance.
Yeah. Right.
If you have to go to the doctor, I don't want you taking an hour of PTO to go see a doctor if you just work 3 hours extra over the weekend to get a project done for a client. So we really try and create a flexible environment where people can do as best they can to balance work and life.
Right. Entrepreneurial journey, they say, it looks very glamorous for people who are looking from the outside in, right? Someone is building a business and they're building a successful company and living a successful life. And yet, what I've found is that the entrepreneurial journey is not always moonlight and roses, right? What I would like to ask you is has there ever been a difficult moment in your journey that sticks out, is the most significant to you, that basically was like, I'm done. This is not, what did I do? I shouldn't have signed up for this. Did it ever happen, or something similar to that?
Well, my humorous answer is, has there ever been a week that hasn't been like that? Sometimes it feels that way, but reality, there's not been anything like COVID.
Wow.
There have been all sorts of challenges through the years of all variety of different types, shapes, forms, whatever.
Yeah.
But for us, there's nothing like COVID because we focus on senior living.
Mm-hmm.
Who was hit hardest by COVID?
Right.
Pre-vaccine. It was seniors.
Yeah.
They were the most vulnerable.
Yeah.
Communities shut down. Marketing stopped.
Right.
Growth, any planning to grow a community stopped.
Right.
All the engines that drive our business stopped.
Right.
And so it was a much more difficult time for us than it was for many. I mean, I could also imagine, I couldn't imagine what it would be like to try to own a restaurant during that time. I know that would have been hard. So it's not like we were the worst ever or anything, but it was a really hard time period financially.
Sure.
We did everything. We tried to be good citizens, keep your employees, keep paying them, take a PPP loan to be able to do that. Even though your operating results look horrendous, because, and even though everybody knows why you're doing what you're doing, everybody meaning in the company, it's difficult to report that, okay, we lost $50,000 this month. We lost $50,000 this month.
Sure.
Over and over for an extended period of time, even though we all know that that's intentional because there was this $1 million in PPP loans that we got in order to be able to make that happen. It's still difficult emotionally to go through that and that process.
Sure.
The other thing that happened then that was really difficult for us was the change in the work environment and the move to work from home.
Right.
Because we're based in Frederick, Maryland, and probably about 90% of our employees before the pandemic were within an hour of Frederick.
Sure.
We only had a few that might have been an hour. Most people were within 20 or 30 minutes of our office. We came in every day. We worked together interactively every day. We only had a very few people, scattered across the country who, were not right here. And they had very specialized skill sets that they spent time in the communities, not with us. So they didn't need to be here. Well, all of a sudden we have all this homegrown talent that we've trained and developed for years to really know this field.
Right.
And suddenly they can be picked off and go to work for a company in Philadelphia that wants to focus on senior living. Go to work for a company in Kansas City. Go to work for a company in Richmond, Virginia, and so forth and so on. We lost a number of really talented people who, got opportunities that were great for them. People that may have had someone in a higher position in the company that blocking their growth with us that were able to go into that kind of a position somewhere else.
Sure.
So that was very difficult. Now, of course, the flip side is we were then able to hire from wherever.
Right.
We hired a media director from Rochester, New York.
Sure.
We hired an interactive, digital interactive director from Nebraska.
Right.
Our website developers are in Ohio and Florida.
Mm-hmm.
So it created an opportunity for us to bring in, over time, more experienced talent than we were able to get locally.
Sure.
But that transition period from losing key people to eventually we were able to rebuild with even better skill sets, that was a very difficult
I understand.
Time period to make that transition.
Sure.
So there were a couple of facets of COVID, both financially and work environment, that they were tough. But hey, we're here.
You're here.
We get through it.
Yes, you're here.
We're doing well again.
Congratulations. They say that it doesn't feel like it when we're going through it, but challenges are an opportunity in disguise. Yep. And it's a blessing in disguise. So one aspect of that is that it makes us look inward. I think the whole COVID thing, I thought, was on a global scale, was an opportunity for all of us to look inside, look inward, sit down by ourselves, don't interact with people for a while, and look within and reflect a little bit. What's important in life? What are our priorities and things of that nature, which we don't do. I think we don't do as much as we probably should do, in my opinion. So as we deal with challenges like this, sometimes, and you hear, we come out stronger, and we learn a thing or two about ourselves, individually and collectively. So was there anything that you learned about yourself, Rob Love, you yourself, or as the group of people that's Love and Company, that you didn't know before?
I want to address this as a little more over time.
Okay.
And again, kind of like I talked earlier with the increased passion for the business as you age, as you mature, you can look at things differently.
Sure.
When I was younger, 25 years ago, when I first bought the business, I'm sure I was a lot less patient.
Mm-hmm.
I was more, okay, come on, let's go do this. And so forth. And that's evolved over time. I've learned that patience and perseverance are probably the two strongest skills that you need to sort of survive and thrive as an entrepreneur. And so by repeatedly learning those lessons of patience and perseverance, for the initial 20 years, really laid the foundation that, to help get through the COVID time period. Okay. We've been through tough times before. We're going to make it through this one. Again, let's just take a breath and figure out how. What's step one? What's step two? Let's not try and jump to step 10, but let's have the patience, but take a breath and know that we're going to get there. We're going to figure it out. So perseverance and patience are things that I think I had the perseverance to begin with, but I had to develop more of the patience.
Yes. Wise words. So looking forward, I don't know, and you started the company when you got into it, that's in the beginning of the company, you had an exit strategy in mind. Do you have, at this point, a vision of what Love and Company should be or will be, let's say 10, 20, 30 years in the future?
I can't, go ahead.
And I was just kind of saying that, and if there is something, what would it be?
I can't say 20 years into the future.
The world is changing too fast.
I am close to, retirement age. That is something that, by the end of the 10-year horizon, it's probably the longest horizon for me to really think about and focus on where do I want
Sure.
the company to go.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a tremendous, we are at the beginning of the greatest growth period of those people who are what we call age and income qualified
Correct.
to move into senior living.
Sure.
Age is typically 75 and older. You're talking about the boomers, though. The oldest boomers have not hit 80 yet.
Yeah.
And most people that move into senior living are pretty close to 80.
Yeah.
So in terms of the impact on senior living, the boomer impact is really just starting.
Yeah.
It's just started the last few years.
Right.
And so it's got a 15-year run
Right.
ahead of it.
Sure.
And boomers are more affluent in many ways
Right.
than, there are more affluent boomers than there have been affluent silent generations
Sure.
or others.
Yeah.
So it's a really dynamic time for our field.
Sure.
So our vision is to really encourage and inspire our market, our CEOs, our communities, leadership teams,
Sure.
boards, at communities to recognize this opportunity to grow.
Yeah.
And to serve this market and to understand what they need to do to be able to do that. So there's a lot of education, there's a lot of board education,
Sure.
C-suite education
Yeah.
in what we're trying to do now. How that comes back and helps us as a company is doing the work to help them grow, to create the vision for their communities of the future, and
Sure.
then help bring that vision to life and to market that expansion. So there's really a lot of, more than ever, opportunities for growing this field.
Sure.
And then beyond that, it's just continuing to get better at everything that we do.
Mm-hmm.
Digital marketing is, over the last 4 years since COVID, our market has become much more technologically sophisticated
Right.
than they ever were.
Mm.
And so we and everybody in the field needs to get more and more sophisticated with how we use digital marketing tools
Sure.
to the best advantage of communities. So that's the other facet of things,
Great.
from a vision perspective. The next 5 years, it continues to develop.
Sure. On that thread a little bit, if you were advising someone who wants to take a company like yours, and just like you took a company that your mother had founded, you took it to a next level, took it to new heights. If there was someone who came along to you and said, "I'm gonna take Love and Company." I love the name, by the way. Love, what a name! I have a friend. His name is Love as well. The last name is Love. And someone comes along and says, "I'm gonna take Love and Company to the next level." And yes, there is changes. There's societal changes. There's technological changes, and the whole world is changing, right? And yet there are some principles and some values that never change. There's the unchanging. So if you were to give this person a few words of advice on how to take a company like Love and Company and make it even more successful, what are some of the things that you would say that, change whatever else you want, but these are 1, 2, or 3 things that I don't want you to change. Stick to these things and be true to values, principles, ideas that you hold dear.
The first one is do the right thing for the client. I'm a very long run focused person. I'm not a short run. Well, this is the best thing to get us through today. We'll worry about tomorrow. That's not how I think.
Yeah.
So the field that we work in, it's not a very big field.
Right.
I know a lot of the people know me. And so your reputation is everything.
Mm-hmm.
And, do the right thing, make the right decision for the client. It may cost us more to do that.
Right.
But if you earn that trust and confidence of the client, they're going to stay with you.
Right.
We went through this process I don't know, maybe 15 years ago, our accounting systems had just been really messed up. I won't go into why.
Mm-hmm.
But as we really worked through every account, we started finding money
Right.
that, at least on paper, belonged to our clients, not to us.
Right.
Like we may have pre-invoiced for something that work we never did.
Right.
And so we started, as we cleaned up, we started sending checks back to clients
Right.
saying, hey, we discovered this in our accounting.
Yeah.
And you prepaid for this, but it never actually happened.
Right.
Here's $10,000 now. And
Wow.
I think that really built us a lot of credibility as, with integrity. And I don't think you can sacrifice that.
Yeah.
That's number one.
Sure.
On the list. Think long term,
Right.
not short term.
This has been a fascinating conversation, Rob. And if someone wants to reach out and get in touch with you, first of all, what are the things that you like to, obviously, customers, clients, folks like that, employees or candidates, but those are included, but also someone who wants to reach out and have a conversation with you about some of the things that we talked about or anything else. What are the kinds of things that you like to talk about, and how do people get in touch with you to connect with you?
Certainly there's the website, lovingcompany.com,
Sure.
and that has our contact information on it. And if you Google Rob Love, Loving Company, link, you get our website, and you get my LinkedIn profile. So that's an easy way, without having to remember a long email address or phone number. That's an easy way to find me too, and then like DM through LinkedIn.
Yeah.
What do I like to talk about? I think I would turn that around and say, if there's something I've talked about today that someone would want to explore further, I would be happy to.
Thank you.
So I don't know if there's any particular one thing that I would share. I do. Yep. I did have one other thought.
Go ahead, please. Yeah.
Your focus is very heavily on entrepreneurship.
Sure.
And, being successful and so forth, and words of wisdom.
Yeah.
And one of the best things about being the entrepreneur, about being the person that owns your own business, is you can't blame anybody else.
Yeah.
If something's not working the way you want it to work, fix it.
Yeah.
Change it.
Yeah.
It's you.
Yeah.
You're in charge. You can make it happen.
Right.
And you don't go home at night complaining about the boss who did something else strange or weird. You're the boss.
Right.
And that's liberating, and it's freeing.
Yeah.
One of the worst things about being an entrepreneur is you don't have anyone else to blame.
The same thing.
Because if something goes wrong, you have to own it.
Yeah.
And fix it.
Yes.
And accept responsibility that's ultimately, where responsibility lies.
Right.
But within that, be ready to forgive yourself. Understand you're going to make mistakes. I wouldn't even want to think about how many mistakes I've made over the last 30 years.
Yeah.
They happen. The question is not how many mistakes you made.
Yeah.
What do you learn? How do you move forward?
Yeah.
How do you take a breath? How do you persevere? How do you use your patience?
Yeah.
And how do you move forward? But don't blame yourself.
Sure.
There's no value in that. Take a breath and figure out, what am I learning and how do I move forward?
Yeah.
So like so many things in life, the blessing of something is also the curse.
Yes.
You don't have anyone else to blame.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's liberating, but it can be a crutch if you don't forgive yourself.
Yes. I absolutely love that. And forgiving yourself part I think in my own experience, I can totally relate to what you say. It is so important to forgive ourselves because we're going to make mistakes. If you're not making mistakes, we're not doing enough things. You know, a guy who never plays tennis is not going to lose a match to anyone ever, right? If you go out and play, you're going to lose. So, and blessing is also a curse. And what you said, something that is so beautiful, is that ultimately even the blessing is a curse, but even the curse is a blessing. It's all a blessing in the end. So as long as you learn to forgive yourself and forgive your mistakes and accept yourself as who you are, and you playing out in this life the best that you can, and you move through it with grace. And I love the word forgiveness for yourself. And we can't forgive others, and we can't relate with others. We can't do all of those things unless we do that with ourselves. The relationship with ourselves, within ourselves, is more important than the relationships it's not more important necessarily, but it's first before we build relationships with others.
Yes.
So then we can bring that grace and to others, forgive them for their mistakes and so on and so forth. So I'm so glad that we had this conversation, Rob. This is very inspiring.
Thank you again for the invitation. I really appreciate it. And I hope it's helpful to someone.
Yes, it's been a helpful conversation to me, and that's my first test of this conversation. So if I learn something from it, and if I get inspired, I'm getting goosebumps right now. If I get inspired, then I know that the listeners and the viewers of this episode, they'll have the same effect.